Oh, D. What do you know, D? What do you know, big shaggy boy? Big fluffy monster boy. What do you know? Huh? What do you know? What do you think? Oh, you want your one ball throw for the morning? Okay. One ball throw. There you go. I'm betting that when you bring that back, you won't hand it. Come on. Bring it. Bring it, you wuss. Come on. Put her right here. Put her there. Put her there, Dave. Put her there. He won't do it. Good morning, Mr. Naughty Priest. Thank you, as always. Your continued support. You're a good man, Charlie Brown. You're a good man. What a fellow. That Naughty Priest is some kind of something. Evil little D, you be a good boy. Yeah, you hear that, D? You be a good boy, too. Naughty Priest the goat, yeah. The go-at. Oh, man. Bzz, bzz. Having brain zaps. Brain zaps. Bzz, brain zaps. Bzz. I always wonder what Naughty Priest does for a living. He's a farmer, from what I hear. I have to give a speech on an influential person for class, and your video on women of the labor rights movement helped me decide on Rosina Tucker. Cool. Good choice, by the way. Yeah, that'll be a fun one, too, for your class, because a lot of people are going to be doing speeches on people that you've all heard of, you know, and be like, oh, Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, and you're going to go in there with a really influential person that did a lot of good in the world that not a lot of people have heard of. So that's cool. That's always been like the my desire when I do those types of episodes where I cover like labor leaders or political figures that you haven't heard of, is you know, I want people to be more aware of the avenues that average folks have to make a difference. Because Rosina Tucker was not from money, she was not from a powerful family, she was not from any kind of power base at all other than the power of labor. And she was able to affect a massive amount of change. I want to apologize to you for not being a good fan a couple of episodes ago. I don't even know what you're talking about, homie. So whatever that was water under the bridge. If you didn't get banned, you didn't do anything.
Yep.
A little salt explosion here and there. I might have just been even ribbing you, dude. Knowing me. There are some people that, you know, they're like kind of sensitive to that, and I'm not. And so I'm the type of person that, like, I'll call them, you know, call my friends an idiot or whatever the fuck, and then I don't really mean that. You got too political. I don't even remember it. So, hey, don't worry about it, bro.
You guys overestimate Paul's memory significantly.
They also, I think, overestimate, like, the importance of certain things to me.
Yeah.
But it's okay. I understand. It's a hard thing, like coming up with, like, being able to read human intent through the internet. You know what I mean? I might have had the intent to just make a joke at your expense, and it maybe came off like I was pissed at you or something. And there's some people that, you know, they just don't want to feel like somebody's mad at you. Trust me, I'm not.
Yeah, if it happened in chat and you ain't banned, probably don't remember it.
Even if you are banned, I probably don't remember it. I'll be honest with you. I don't have a catalog of that shit, so... Jeez, 2 in a row? That got to be taken care of? Let's see. Time you. Get a profile pic. And I'm going to time you. No caps.
Come on, y'all.
It's okay. We're good. It's a little outburst. I mean, come on. Get with it. All caps is rude, man. Think about it. A lot of people don't even think all caps is a big deal. But it is. Number one, I'll give you reasons. Number one, it's the internet equivalent of yelling and always has been. When you're mad at somebody or trying to get more attention, you in all caps. Number two, you are attempting to manipulate my attention via your use of caps. So somebody might type a thoughtful comment, but my eye is drawn, as everyone else's is, to the big giant wall of all caps text.
It also takes longer to read all caps. Like, our brains don't want to...
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Our brains are used to the normal, well, in the English language, you know, we're used to the normal capitalization structure and stuff. And if you don't use that, it makes it flow worse. And so not only does it take longer for me to read it and take away from other people's stuff, but it's just rude. Don't walk up in a group of people and start attention seeking. You want attention, say something funny and insightful. Okay? Be good? Everybody understand that? Being a nice guy today, look at that. I'm in a good mood. I don't know if I'd say good mood. I'm in a better mood than I was a couple of days ago. A couple of days ago, I was just in it's like a rotten mood. Not in a rotten mood today. I'm okay. I'm in an alright mood. Emperor Maximilian I was the first ruler to utilize the media propaganda to an extensive degree. He was the Trump of the 1500s. I don't even know what you're talking about, bro, but that's cool. That burger made you feel good? Yeah. Dude, I devoured that burger too. I was out here yesterday like a carnivore. I told them I ordered a burger, and when it gets here, I'm fucking leaving. And the whole show, I was like making all these hungry comments, you know what I mean? Like, we started talking about cannibalism for some reason, and like the law of the jungle was about to be instituted out here. Dinor was in trouble because I was he was doing that cartoon thing where I look at him, and then he turns into like a little turkey, roasted turkey. I'm like, Carl, have you ever put out a cigarette on your hand? Yes, but not like just like. I knew a dude that would put out his cigarettes by spitting. This was an older guy. He would spit in his hand and to make sure he didn't set any fires or whatever. And I tried that one time, but I've never like. That seems a little masochistic.
Yeah. Apparently the military thing is like where you flick out the cherry or whatever.
It's called field strip.
Yeah.
Yeah. Steve taught me how to do that, actually. So when you're done with a cigarette, well, maybe when I finish one earlier, but yeah, when you're done with a cigarette, you get down to that little last bit of cherry, you field strip the cigarette, and you pack out your butts because they can be used to track you in a military setting. So you roll the cigarette like this until what's left of the cherry falls out on the ground. You stomp that out and you pocket the butt, and you dispose the butts when you're not out on patrol.
Or you can just flick it.
What?
The cherry out. You don't
Yeah,
have to
you can
roll
flick it, but
Yeah.
the better field stripping involves, because sometimes if you flick a cherry, it still leaves a little bit burning.
Yeah, that's true.
Field stripping it makes sure that the whole cherry gets out onto the ground, so you can. It's a good thing to know if you're a smoker and you go out to like the beach, or you go to like a national park or the woods or something, because there's nothing wrong with, lighting up a smoke in the redwoods or whatever, in my opinion, but you should definitely not be flicking your butt anywhere. You should, keep them in a pocket until you get to a trash can and throw them away. And field stripping makes that pretty easy. Toodly-doo. Your studies revolve around 15th and 16th century Europe and the Ottoman Wars, and that topic is just damn fascinating. Okay.
You gotta get a little on topic, bro.
I appreciate passionate people, like people that are passionate for certain historical subjects or philosophical subjects and shit. I definitely don't want to dissuade that. But it is odd crowbarring in a discussion about a ruler that nobody knows about,
Mm-hmm.
You gotta be aware. It's like me, dude. Some days I just want to like ramble about nothing but Warhammer to you. And I understand that like 90% of you have never even looked into Warhammer, and so it's a pretty boring topic, But even then, I when I do talk about it, I try and talk about it in a way that gives people an overarching idea what I'm talking about. Warhammer 40K or Fantasy Battle, 40K. Although, I haven't bought any minis yet, and I gotta tell you, dude, I do think that Warhammer Age of Sigmar, which is the second season of the fantasy game or whatever, gets way better looking minis. Like the minifigures for Age of Sigmar are fucking insane. But I don't like the setting as much. I don't like the typical kind of high fantasy grimdark stuff. I like the sci-fi setting. Their minifigures are, and a lot of times they're older, and so the castings are different. Some of the characters can look a little bit disproportionate or cartoony almost sometimes. Whereas if you look at the new range of Age of Sigmar figurines, they're like little works of art, man. They're like little statues. Some of them aren't even all that little. Like, there's an army in Age of Sigmar called the Sons of Behemoth, which is basically like a big elite army of giants, where instead of having a whole field of 40, 50, 60, 100 smaller troops, you've got 5 or 6 big giants. And these dudes, like the sculptures of them that you put on the table, are like yay tall. you know, like 6 inches or 7 inches tall, and super detailed. Yeah. For 40K, the only like analog to that is the Imperial Knights and the Chaos Knights, who are like the big mech suit guys, where once again, instead of, and there are ways that you can ally them into an army and have a bigger army, but yeah, instead of fielding a big giant army, you field an army of 3 or 4 or 5 big mechs. They were one of the ones that I considered collecting at first, but I really like having the smaller army and a bunch of different types of models rather than 2 or 3 big ones. Sega had 40K games. Was it on the Genesis or something? Yeah, Sega, yeah, it's not 40K, unfortunately. Yeah, I mean, I like it still. I like the Total War Warhammer series or whatever, but it's definitely in the like Age of Sigmar / Warhammer Fantasy universe, which I don't even really understand the difference between. Apparently, I thought they were the same thing, but apparently they're 2 different eras of the fantasy thing. I thought Warhammer was like small figurines. Most of it is. Most of Warhammer figurines are going to be like, you know, I don't know, 2 inches to 3 inches tall, and you've got like an army of, like I said, 50 or 60 of them, all kind of painted individually. But some armies have more what they call elite armies, which means that instead of spending your points to field a big troop of Imperial Guard with 80 soldiers in it, you field 2 or 3 big dudes that are really powerful, you know. Knights and Titans never made sense to me. Impractical, both on the tabletop and in the, well, yeah, I don't understand anything about the game really, so I can't really talk about the meta. But yep, I didn't know exactly where it was invented, but I know that wargaming has its roots in strategy. Like generals would have these elaborate, you know, fields of battle made for them so that they could, and then with a bunch of little miniatures to represent their foot and their cavalry and their light cav and their artillery and blah blah blah, and they would place, you know, to plan kind of like their battle formations and shit. And it's actually a way older hobby than people think it is. I mean, Warhammer itself is not super old, but the idea of, like, you know, painting up these armies and all of that. Signed my home insurance today, $8 a month for $160,000 of insurance. That was the cheapest option. Are there any equivalents in the USA? Probably not. I don't think that you're going to get anything like $160,000 of guaranteed loss coverage for $8 a month anywhere in the USA for anything.
Yeah, like even just mortgage insurance is normally a few $100 a month. If you have a high risk insurance or mortgage.
Yeah.
Especially if that's $8 of your funny money, then
Right.
it's pretty cheap.
It's true.
No offense to your country, but
dude, a kroner is a kroner, man. Kroner is a Kroner. Dude, Vuren is a talented musician.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen him in the community. He will do like songs about the show, and he plays guitar. How old is Warhammer? I think it started in like the late 80s or early 90s with its like first iteration. It's a very different game now than it was then. And in fact, back in when Warhammer first started, it wasn't what we like right now. The Warhammer universe is literally the origin of the term grimdark. There's a tagline for Warhammer 40K: in the grim darkness of the future there is only war. And people took that and started calling Warhammer grimdark because the setting was based on the idea that there are really no good guys. I mean, yeah, there might be well-intentioned people, but all of them are part of a machine that is just grinding away at humanity. And there's really no way to be a good guy in the series of Warhammer. And so what it leads to is a setting that is mostly filled with suffering, degradation, exploitation if you're not a notable character. If you're an average citizen of the human Imperium, which, by the way, in the setting of 40K encompasses over 1 million worlds estimated. So we're talking about quadrillions of human beings, maybe like trillions or quadrillions of human beings. So you can imagine how cheap life is in the 40K universe. It is not uncommon for 200, 300,000 member guard detachment to be utterly wiped out. And other than, the personal tragedies of each one of their families having to find out that they died, when it comes to the Imperium, it's like not even a blip on the radar. 300,000 troops. I mean, yeah, it's a consideration. Sure, you'd rather not lose them. But when you do, like if any other country, in the world at this state lost even 50,000 troops in a single battle or some shit, it would be considered to be a massacre. But that can happen multiple times a day for the Imperium. And because there are quadrillions of people in these hive cities that are dotted over these millions of specialized worlds, there's just an endless supply of new people to funnel into the grinder. People living in this posh, plush modern era forget people like Putin, Bush, Hirohito exist who will go to war. No amount of persuasion will stop them. Yeah, well, I mean, those people will always exist so long as there's a mechanism for those people to exist. And by that I mean, so long as Earth is divided factionally, those people will exist. If, in a hypothetical future, Earth is united under one banner, in that transitional period between when we become theoretically an intergalactic power or an interplanetary power, there would be really no reason to wage war. You could have something more akin to a Star Trek future at that point. The human federation type of concept. I do think that once humans start spreading themselves out in the galaxy, that's when the war starts. And that's really what's at the core of Warhammer. It's kind of interesting. Warhammer is like, in the distant past in Warhammer 40K, humanity was way more technologically advanced than it is in the current setting, and spread throughout the known universe and colonized millions and millions of worlds. And then there were these warp storms that happened that functionally disabled faster than light travel. And all of these worlds were lost, basically. The people that lived there no longer could rely on the human Imperium to reinforce them. So a lot of them were just utterly overrun by aliens or civil war. And so much time went by that a lot of these societies on these worlds that were settled during this era that's now a bygone era in the setting have forgotten that the human imperium even existed. Like they've gone functionally through another stage of evolution where they've recontextualized their colony planet as the home planet of humanity. They think that they started there, they've always been there. I mean, there are tons of planets in the Imperium that have yet to be reclaimed, that where people have gone to that point where it's like they think that the stories of the old Imperium and stuff are just a fairy tale until the Imperium shows up to enforce compliance. Yeah, there were planets that were, like Raynox said, that were utterly dependent on interstellar imports because the planet itself couldn't support human beings, and so those planets just, like he said, cannibalized themselves. It just died off. There were planets that could support agriculture and stuff, and those a lot of those planets literally regressed to like a medieval state. So in Warhammer 40k, it's not uncommon to find space marines, you know, with all of their crazy gear and tanks and mech suits of various sizes and advanced weaponry and stuff, landing on a world that is populated by medieval peasants, basically. People that are scrabbling around sharecropping. And they use that to their advantage in enforcing compliance on these worlds, because a lot of these worlds have fallen into the light of paganism and what they would call ignorance in 40k. And so when these dudes show up in the sky and then land in their huge armor covered in the heraldry of the empire, people think that they're angels. Like there are whole, you know, worlds that think that space marines are angels. Dude, why are you all doomery today, Jason? What happened to you? The Space Wolves chapter of Space Marines maintains their planet and a medieval living standard to have hardened recruits. Yeah, so they've got like a Viking aesthetic to them, and they maintain their planet in a low technology state with lodges and hunting and all of the stuff that you would expect from a kind of Nordic Viking culture, so that the recruits that they get in their chapter will be properly hardened in their minds or whatever. It's a shame that there's such a huge distance between solar systems. Well, I mean, the distance may end up being nothing at all. See, that's the thing about, you know, the inexorable march forward of science. Presuming that we don't, like Jason is talking about, burn ourselves out, and I think that that's a very distinct possibility, by the way, you know me. But presuming that we don't, it's very easy to posit the idea that distance is only a problem because we don't understand the nature of space-time yet. Like, we don't understand the nature of it. We don't understand how to properly harness it. Distance may actually be nothing at all. Quantum strangeness implies that. Quantum strangeness implies that distance is just an illusory concept. You know, And so, as we come to scientifically understand these things and invent technologies that are better at exploiting them, distance may become nothing at all. Yeah, Games Workshop is really old, and Warhammer is really old. For those that don't know, there's a reason to be so authoritarian in 40k. A single rogue psyker could become a vessel for a demon and destroy an entire world. Yeah, but see, here's the thing. You're obviously an Imperial. You have the reek of an Imperial because you're going like, oh yes, I understand that the Imperium is a horrible, grinding, apocalyptically dark place to live, but has to be that way because one rogue person could like wipe out a planet. So we, in order to keep that from happening, wipe out thousands of planets. Are you starting to see like he's starting to see the inherent kind of like the Imperium is responsible for wiping out thousands and thousands of planets. Just like when I say wiping it out, I mean virally bombing the planet with a thing called I can't even remember what it's called. It's got a horrifying name. The Death Killer virus or something. I think it's called the Life Eater virus. We've got this super specialized virus. They virally bomb the planet so that no organic being can live on it. And sometimes, just to make sure, they glass the whole planet with nukes. Or in certain extreme cases, like literally launch these big bombs that burrow to the center of the planet and blow it to pieces. Like that's if they really want to send like a message. And so this idea that the Imperium has to be hard and authoritarian in order to keep tragedies from happening on these worlds ignores the fact that the Imperium is the source of all tragedy in the universe to most people. It may not be so on the vast geopolitical scale because there are other alien empires and alien, things that are fighting against humanity and trying to take over humanity and stuff, and then there are demons and stuff. But when it comes to humanity and the way it runs itself, there's no excuse. Humanity has fallen. So that's what I like about 40k. It's not a it's not a high sci-fi universe. It's a sci-fi universe where they've got technology that we don't, but politically and socially they've regressed. They've gone back to what we would call the Dark Ages, where they have a literal inquisition that runs around giving people extrajudicial executions, and they've got like one of the most powerful entities in 40k is called the Ecclesiarchy, which even if you don't know what that word means, you probably can hear the churchy tones about it. So the Ecclesiarchy is kind of like one of the most powerful arms of the Imperium, and it's their job to enforce the singular worship of the Emperor as God and to stamp out heresy in any form. And heresy is defined as anything that is not in the books that we approve, anything that's not in the religion that we practice. So if you decide like, hey, you know what, I'm an atheist, and enough people on your planet decide like, yeah, you know what, I heard Paul out, and I don't think the Emperor's God at all. That doesn't make any sense. I don't think there are any gods, man. I'm an atheist too. But you get like 100,000 people on your planet thinking that, you're in trouble. Just for having a thought, just for like thinking differently than another citizen in the Imperium. I can guarantee you, before it ever gets big, before it ever gets to 100,000, you're getting a visit. The black ships are coming for your ass. You're getting a visit. You're getting press ganged into labor on a Mechanicus arc, or you're being taken to Mars to be made into a servitor. So you just get like lobotomized basically, and then your brain and parts of your biological structure are augmented with a bunch of cybernetics, and you're directly controlled, and your whole job is like lifting crates all day, and you have very limited, rudimentary sense of who you once were. You know what I mean? That's what happens to you if you speak heresy against the emperor. And anything, it's like you could even believe in the emperor. It would be like, you know, the whole Nicene Creed or the Council of Nicaea, where at one point Christianity had to get together and decide, like, is Jesus a literal God, or was he just a guy that was a prophet of God? And the Christendom was divided on this. And so the Council of Nicaea was held to, among other things, ultimately decide on the divinity of Christ. And you know what I mean? So there would be no council. There would be no Council of Nicaea in the Imperium of 40K. There would be a meeting somewhere on Terra about your heresy, and then an immediately dispatched group of the Sisters of Battle, who are the Ecclesiarchy's military enforcement wing, and they're going to show up and they're going to destroy you and everybody that you know, and every pamphlet that you've ever printed, and every work that you've ever done, and anybody that's ever fucking sympathized with you or would take up your defense is dead as well. And the message is, like, heresy is punishable by death. You're a heretic. You decide that, like, I don't know, you know, I worship the emperor and I believe in the emperor, but I don't necessarily think he's a god. Mm-mm. No. No. It doesn't work that way. I mean, you can think it all you want, but you better not speak it. And you better be careful thinking it too, because the Imperium has psychic people, who, among other things, can read intent. So even if you're a dude that's like, hail the Emperor protects, you know, but in your mind you're like, I don't really believe that. You happen to be around the wrong person, you're fucked. He wasn't a god. Well, that's the thing about the emperor is the one thing the emperor did not want was to be worshipped as a god. When the emperor was actually alive, back in like the 30Ks or whatever, he was like Giga Carl Sagan, basically. He was like Giga Chad Carl Sagan. He was a dude that was all about science and empiricism and the enlightenment of the darkness of religion with the truth of science. That's what he empowered his Space Marines to go out during what he called the Great Reclamation, which was, he, you know, sent the Space Marines out to bring all these worlds that had been lost in that aforementioned thing we talked about earlier, where the warp storms, you know, the Age of Strife, they call it. So all these human worlds that had now descended into chaos and anarchy and self-governance. He sent them out to eradicate the darkness of religion and to bring the light of science and technology and the empire, to create a new golden age for the empire that was free from all of that superstition. And kind of ironically, the undoing of the emperor started with a group of people who worshipped him. Yeah. He got super ultra pissed. Yeah, he found one of his main guys, one of his main generals, had written this book. This guy's name was Lorgar. He'd written this book called the Book of Lorgar. Or actually, I don't think it was called the Book of Lorgar before, but it was basically a book laying out the argument for the divinity of the Emperor. The fact that the Emperor was not just a man, was not just an incredibly powerful psyker, but that he was divine, that there's no way that he could not be divine. And he found out, the Emperor found out that this was happening, and he actually dragged that guy and everybody that was with him to their home world, and he made them kneel in front of him while he made the other chapters of the Space Marines destroy their home world, because their home world had become dotted with all kinds of like little churches and temples to him and shit. And he was like, nope, I told you that this is, ignorance is not allowed. You know, in his mind, ignorance of religion is not allowed here. And so he, rounded all of them up, took them to their home world, had them kneel in front of him, while in the background they bombed their home world to dust. That was I think it was the Word Bearers chapter, if I'm not mistaken. And it was one of the things that twisted that chapter towards chaos and led to the ultimate betrayal and death of the Emperor. And when I say death, it's kind of weird in 40K. The Emperor was mortally wounded, and the tech priests, all the cybernetic transhumanists, managed to preserve a tiny little spark of his consciousness in his corpse. And they entombed him on this golden throne where he's plugged into this giant machine called the Astronomicon. And that little tiny spark of his consciousness that they were able to digitally preserve runs this machine that allows human beings to map out interstellar travel. But other than that, he literally doesn't exist. He's just a corpse sitting on a throne with all kinds of tubes going into him, so that that little tiny piece of him that may be left in there, or at least, and some people don't even think there's that. Some people think it's just his body being ceremonially used as a conduit to run this machine. But yeah, he's kind of derogatorily called by Xenos races and people that follow chaos the corpse god, because to them it's like laughable that they worship a corpse. Not even like an ethereal idea of gods. They don't go to the warp where you can actually find beings that, at least to our perception, are gods. No, they worship some old dead guy's corpse. And in the name of that, by the way, a guy who was completely against the idea of religion, so would be rolling in his grave if they would have been able to give him one, because he's rolling on his throne as people do the exact thing that he didn't want them to do and have enshrined him as a god. Humanity has fallen to a way more medieval point, but kept its technology. And so you can imagine the brutality. Imagine the brutality of medieval era Europe, but instead of swords and maces, you've got pulse rifles and plasma rifles and giant tanks and flying machines that can drop virus bombs all over everything and shit. You can imagine. Combine the Catholic Church with both unlimited power and control over the military, and you've got a pretty good idea of what human beings live under in the 41st millennium. And so, that's what I meant when I was saying earlier. There are really no good guys in this universe. There really can't be. There are good people in the universe, you know, serving in the military, living in these hives, but what they're supporting is the endless grinding, literal sacrifice of human life in order to grease the wheels of the Imperium. And I'm not just talking about sending people into endless wars where they're used as cannon fodder. I'm talking about literally abducting people who are psychically active so that 1,000 of them a day can be fed to that Astronomicon machine that I was talking about, that the Emperor, the dead Emperor runs. They have to be sacrificed 1,000 a day in order to power it, to keep that little spark of him alive so he can run the Astronomicon. Pretty crazy, but pretty fun. I also like the fact that despite being a spacefaring, hyper advanced technologically compared to us race, humanity can't invent new shit. Not can't, but it's very rare for new shit, like, because humanity has basically regressed technologically, and a lot of the most powerful things that they have to use in the military, like the Titans, these giant, like, walking buildings, basically, that are bristling with guns, and a lot of their tanks, and a lot of that stuff is just technology. All of it is technology that's left over from the previous age that they've managed to rediscover, that's outstripped anything that they could invent on their own, because they don't understand the core mechanics that were behind the generation of that technology, because that's been lost. And so humanity, despite being insanely advanced, is existing in a period of relative stagnation because they can't invent anything new. And so what ends up happening is you've got these old, like, Space Hulk ships that were made back in the dark age of technology, but that are, like, now 20, 30,000 years old. And so they're literally just like, they become like these dank environments where a lot of the rooms that used to be used for this, that, and the other thing have been repurposed, and now you've got, like, catacombs in these ships, and, like, basements that are unused, and creatures and aliens can sneak onto them and set up little fucking societies down in the bowels of these ships because they're so ponderously huge. And even though humanity flies them around, they don't fully understand everything that they're capable of. And so some of these rooms just end up going to dilapidation. So it's crazy. Well, the Mechanicus gets very upset if anybody touches tech, right? And that's the thing, is like, the dogmatism at the heart of the Imperium keeps them from assimilating new technology. And you know, they believe that they have to rediscover the technology that was lost in the dark age of technology, what they call the dark age of technology, where humanity was super advanced. They feel like that's the only line that humanity can take. We got to get back to that. And so if you run into an alien race and they've got a cool gun that does something that's really destructive, you would think humanity would go like, fuck yeah, let's figure out how this works and manufacture it. But the Mechanicum goes like, no, because that's Xenos technology. That's technology made by an alien race, and it's corrupted technology. And to be honest with you, there's historical precedent to this belief. You know, the guy that ended up killing the Emperor, one of his sons named Horus, his battle master, was corrupted a number of ways, but one of those ways was through the use of an alien weapon on him. And an alien weapon, by the way, that was taken from a Xenos world instead of destroyed, called the Anothane, which is this weird changing technology thing, and it corrupted him. And so there is precedent to the idea that using alien weaponry can have an effect on you other than just increasing your power level. And so the Mechanicum is very, very strict about, like, You know, we can observe the Xenos to learn about how to better fight them. But as far as like taking their technology and purposing it for us, that would just make us them. And, you know, while I think it's really dogmatic, I think it's understandable given, you know, the political situation. It was basically feudalism, space feudalism. What of alien characters in the storyline? All right. So, in addition to humanity, there are, I mean, there's more than I could go into, but I'll give you the major ones. So, there's the Eldar and their cousins, the Drukhari, and these are like, if I wanted to compare them to something, they'd be like elves. They're like the high elves slash dark elves of the universe. They're an incredibly ancient race that used to have expansive power, just like humanity at one point, but way older. And they fell into ruin and degradation because they're an interesting race. I think I've talked about them a little bit, but the Eldar Empire fell into ruin because they were too good. Basically, they were too good at providing everything that everybody wanted. And so they fell to hedonism and then fell to crazy cults and worships of sensation and shit. And there were so many of them, and they're all, not all of them are psychers, I don't think, but the psychic energy that was generated by the preponderance of Eldar that were psychers kind of came together, basically. Like, they were so hedonistic and so into this like worship of every pleasure that they could imagine, that it gave birth, like it tore a hole in space, you know, between real space and the immaterium, the warp, you know, like that different dimension, and gave birth to this chaos god named Slanesh, and basically killed like 98% of the Eldar race immediately. And so they went from being, you know, this vast, you know, alien race that had immense power and immense coverage, kind of like humanity does now with maybe trillions of people, to immediately having, you know, just a few million individuals left. And they kind of split at that point, or had already kind of split during, you know, the ensuing kind of run up to that, into the Drukhari and the Craft World Eldar. So they, Craft World Eldar are, they built these giant colony ships that they live on, and they are traveling around the galaxy trying to find a home world that they can settle on stably because their race is dying. The Drukhari have retreated into the warp and live there. And they have kind of gone the other way. They have just embraced the hedonism. The way that they stave off Slanesh's call, which killed most of their race, is to be more violent, more hedonistic, to indulge every dark desire that they have. So, got a little light and dark kind of thing. So that's the Eldar. Then there's the Tau. The Tau is like a, they're, I mean, centrally they're one race, but they incorporate other races. They're like this greater good cooperative type of thing. They're a relatively new race in terms of Warhammer, so they don't have anywhere near the territory or expansive power as the human Imperium does, but their dedication to cooperating with other alien races and integrating that technology into their own has given them a pretty giant leap in technological ability. And so they are able to compete in skirmishes and even major battles with the Empire because even though they are far fewer in number, their technology is pretty good. But, you know, they, like the Eldar, have a consideration that the human Imperium doesn't. We've talked about how many quadrillions of people there are in the human Imperium and how replaceable everybody that dies is. Well, that's not true for the Tau, and that's not true for the Eldar. every life that's lost on the battlefield is a pretty big blow, because they're trying to expand. They're trying to make more of them, not less. Whereas humanity has no need to expand. It's beyond self-sustaining population. So you got them, those are the Tau, and they end up, fighting in a lot of mech suits. They use a lot of drones, sniper rifles, and stuff like that to fight, a lasery kind of shooty way. Then there's the Orcs. The Orcs are a meme, basically. They're great, but they're a meme. In 40K, the Orcs are basically born out of mushrooms. They're a fungal beast that was created way back in prehistory by these ancient god/aliens called the Old Ones. But now, they exist as a scourge upon everything, because their whole culture is insane. Number one, there's only one thing: it's war. Like, they are born, live, and die for war. There's no other reason for existence. If they're not fighting an enemy, then they're likely to just fight each other until they destroy each other. They just won't stop. It's just, they never stop. And that's, and so they also have latent psychic powers that even they don't understand, that allow them to shape and affect the nature of reality. So even though they're incredibly stupid, because they don't value intellect at all. I mean, they value brute force and brute strength. They have this latent psychic ability to affect, like I said, affect reality with their belief. And so it makes them able to create machines that functionally should not work. But because the Orc looks at it and goes, "Oh yeah, that look badass. It go fast, it shoot, it kill many humies," or whatever the fuck. Because they all look at it and believe that, it is so. So it allows Orcs to do stupid shit, like they've got giant, like, they hollow out asteroids and use them as weapons against planets. Like, they'll run, it's called an Orc rock. And how does it move? Because the Orcs believe that it should be able to move, because the humies have big ships, and we've made a big ship out of this rock here. And so without, any kind of aerodynamics or engine or any kind of real idea how warp travel works, it works because, hey, Dim can do it, and so can we. And so they travel around in these big giant asteroids, and they crash them into planets, and Orcs come pouring out of the asteroids, and you're just like, holy. So they're a meme, but a really deadly meme. Obviously, like, as funny as their society is, facing off against one, they're half again as tall as a man, and sometimes way taller than even, the biggest Astartes, which are like the Space Marines. So some of them are just outright huge teeth, huge tusks, and they literally have been born and bred and live only for slaughter and war. And so if you're going up against them, they're gonna kill you, basically, or you're gonna kill them. And then there's the Tyranids, which are, they're basically the Zerg. They're a hive mind insectoid race that uses animals that they find all over the galaxy and incorporates their genetics into their hive and all that shit. Thanks, Shitty Economy, by the way, for the $5. Sorry I missed that. And those are like the major alien races. There are other alien races and stuff like that, but those are the major kind of like participants in the combat when it comes to Xenos races. And then there are the forces of the warp, the forces of chaos. The people and aliens that have aligned themselves directly with one of the 4 gods of chaos, or all of them, and seek to tear down not just the human Imperium, but every alien Imperium as well, and replace the current reality with the pure elemental raw chaos power, basically. Oh yeah, Necrons. I forgot about Necrons. Necrons, they actually have kind of a tragic backstory too. It's kind of hard to explain, but basically the Necrons used to be like like a more fleshy kind of alien, like a normal flesh and bones alien, and they were kind of duped by these hyper powerful aliens into being kind of like a subservient race to them because they had so much power. They were able to they advanced the Necrons, who at the time were called the Necron tier, when they were still humanoid. You know, they advanced the Necrons hugely in power. They were able to harvest the entire, you know, power of a sun. But these giant beings really wanted to just like feed on suns, and they were using the Necrons. Then they ended up making a bargain with the Necrons to make them immortal, and they basically killed them all and replaced them, killed them, like replaced them with a mechanized version of themselves. And so now they exist as basically a race of space terminators. They're sentient machines who all kind of can communicate because they are machines together. They have this kind of baseline mortal instinct still left in them, but they've existed for so long that most of them have forgotten how that works. They go down into these tombs on tomb worlds and sleep for generations and tens and 20s and 30s of thousands of years uninterrupted, and can be awoken at a moment's notice like no time has passed at all. They kind of like have an Egyptian flavor to them, I guess. Egypty. So yeah, I forgot about them. I really don't like the Necrons all that much. Did you recently say they're rather boring to you? Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm not super interested in the Necrons from a lore or aesthetic perspective, so no salt to anybody that plays them, but they're just not for me. The Eldar and the Orcs were created by the Old Ones to fight the Necrons. Well, there you go. There's some deep lore. So the Eldar, and that's kind of like the mythology typically, is that orcs in high fantasy settings are often just perverted elves, or elves that are bred for war, mixed with different, so it's like the same thing here. They're kind of like two sides of the same coin. They were created by this race to fight the Necrons. Interesting. Oh, anyway, I'm out of here. I'll see you guys later. Have a good one.